All right, welcome to Bob Digital Office Hours. We're going to get started here in just a minute, but if you're already on and joined, feel free to drop your question in the chat. We've already had a few questions submitted, so we'll start with those, give everyone a chance to drop theirs in. You're either seeing us through Teams or YouTube, so on YouTube, drop the questions in the YouTube chat, and on Teams, feel free to put your question in, and then we can bring you off mute if you want to give us some more context on your question. We're going to give everyone a minute or two to join here, but we're going to get started pretty soon, so hang around.
We are a pretty unique group because we have deep technical knowledge and we have a lot of broad business knowledge. And our approach is to try to bring those things together.
There's like the HR talent experience team, and then there's the IT team, and they're always butting heads like this. Prime for siloed people, cliques, and people talking around each other, and there being rumors, so it doesn't feel like a cohesive team a lot of the time.
The team that's focused solely on traditional IT is not positioned well to help with how technology could be more strategically used in the business, right? They care about desktop support and making sure that the network is secure.
Giving them a tool doesn't make someone successful. Being able to use that tool to solve a business problem is what makes them successful.
Where we tend to focus is kind of that layer above, where we try to take all of those technology and those tools that you have as an organization and help you leverage them at that business user level so that you're effectively accomplishing your mission in the most efficient way possible.
Because you want every employee, from a person who's managing an office all the way to somebody out in the field or even executive level, you want all of them to be working together.
How do we optimize them? How do we bring them into a technology world where it can do things for us instead of relying on a manual process?
What I care about is that you have the right tool for the job. And so to that end, we're gonna evaluate that and tell you, no, don't do it with that tool. If you're able to use technology more effectively, the people that are supposed to be focused on the mission of the organization can actually do more missional things because the tech is handling the rest.
Having a successful outcome of the project, there's no question that we're going to do everything we can to make that happen. We set ourselves up as an organization that is our focus, that's our guiding light, and so it pervades everything we do. Bob Digital helps organizations transform their business using technology.
We help businesses use technology better so that their people work better together.
Hey, welcome back to Bob Digital Office Hours. Thank you to those of you who are joining us again, and welcome to our newcomers. So a few housekeeping things if you're new here. I'm Emma, and I'm joined with Matt today. And you just saw a little intro video about who we are and what we do at Bulb Digital. But today's focus is really on diving into your questions. So what's going wrong, or what are the challenges you're facing within your workplace? We are open to any types of questions. Doesn't have to be super technical. Definitely around modernizing your workplace with Microsoft 365 specifically are the ones that we love to dive into, but we're open to anything. We do have a couple that got submitted ahead of time, so we might jump into those first, but I also see a few coming in through YouTube as well as on Teams. I'm going to let Matt choose which one we go with first.
Yeah, let's do one.
The previously submitted.
Yeah, let's do one of the previously submitted.
Okay.
So the first one, they're asking, is there a way to seamlessly integrate mail merge functionality in Microsoft 365 with Salesforce's BCC capability?
Oh, yeah. I can give the context here. This person's mentioning, my team often sends mass emails using mail merge, but we can't BCC Salesforce to automatically log these communications. This results in missing critical member interaction data in Salesforce, which they rely on heavily. While they're aware there's a workaround of forwarding each mail merge email to Salesforce, it's super time consuming and inefficient. So is there a solution or workaround that allows to automatically store all sent mail merge messages in Salesforce without manual forwarding? So it's definitely a question about efficiency, which we love. Yeah, let's talk about it.
Yeah, so in this particular case, I'm not exactly sure where this is missing. If you're in Office 365 and you're doing a mail merge out of like Word, for example, when you do that, you should be able to automatically see a BCC option, and assuming your data source has a BCC column that would maybe be all set to the email location that you're going to be working with in Salesforce, I don't see why you wouldn't be able to select that column and say that's where I want the BCC to be sent. And then when you actually execute the mail merge, each one of those messages would automatically be BCC'd to Salesforce. So to me, that makes the most sense. We're not experts in Salesforce, so I can't say for sure that that's the only solution. I feel like we might be missing something because of the way that I think that field is pretty obvious. So we may be missing something on our side. Which, if you're here and if you want to ask more, feel free to clarify and provide more context. But that would be my answer for that one.
Okay.
So let's do one of the live ones, I would say.
Yeah, let's do a live one. Okay, we're going to go to Teams. This one was submitted first. This is from our friend Tanya. I'm involved in a project where we are trying to develop a system where employees can check a box or take a survey to indicate which types of training they're interested, and then receive tailored emails specific to what they indicated they're interested in. How would the Bulb team approach this in a GCC Power Platform? Which is a good caveat. So it sounds like you're basically trying to allow employees to opt in to the types of information and training that would apply to their job. And you want to set this up using the Power Platform.
I would have some questions about how what the user experience you're looking for, how many, there's a bunch of questions I have. Obviously, to do what you're talking about specifically, you can create an MS form and they can fill out some things, and that MS form can propagate something. You can create a SharePoint list. With the new SharePoint lists, you can now have the form be much more. There's actually a way to use make it look a lot like an MS form instead of embedded in a SharePoint list. Which I think might be useful in this case, where you basically create a custom form and they submit it and you get a list item, and that list item allows you to do some things, all the way down to creating something in Power Platform where you're putting stuff in. How I would choose between the two really has a lot to do with, like I was saying, the number of people. Like if you're looking at, for example, a 60,000 organization. An organization that's got like 60,000 users, I might approach that very differently. I also would ask the question about is this just a one-time survey, or is this like my training profile, and I should be able to go edit my training profile and select what I want to be able to update that. So I think I have more questions, but those are three different approaches that I would take for the intake of it. I would definitely be looking at, in regards to how to send that content out, like email it, or email it or propagate it to them. I would actually try to avoid email, and I would try to do, more Teams messaging. So maybe I would even create a bot where somebody could have a conversation about what training they might be able to use. So Tanya gave a profile, I believe. We have lots of questions too. Yep. So if it's a profile, I would be much more looking at it like, a Canvas app, most likely, If it's a large number of users, I might back that with Dataverse to keep to be able to have a large volume and be able to do a bunch more advanced components or advanced features. No Dataverse. Okay. So a Canvas app with a SharePoint list or a custom SharePoint list, right? Small subsection. Okay. So yeah, I mean, that's what I would be trying to do is say, hey, I've got this SharePoint list. You've got your profile, click here to create the profile, and maybe it goes there and asks them a bunch of questions and they submit it, and that creates their personal profile that they can only edit. And then from there, you can then run reports and do other processes that manage it. But that's off the cuff. That's the kind of thing that I would think about.
Yeah. So this question over here on YouTube is somewhat. I lost my mic. Oh, there we go. It's somewhat similar in the sense that it's asking a little bit about forms and that kind of thing. So let me read this one out, and we'll see if you feel like you're done with that one.
No, I'm good with that, I think.
All right, so this one comes in, and they say, can you suggest a process by which you take data tied to a particular date and export it as a PDF template, and then I can share with users outside of my organization? So data is currently in lists. There would be about 20 different data elements for each export and doing about one export per date. I'd want the PDF itself to look very polished with our organization's logo, and it would need to be intuitive for users to interpret the data. The key will be for the list data to populate the PDF. So the ideal state would be, first step, user enters data. If one column's data says X, Y, or Z using a rule and list, it then, 2, exports the data to a template for sharing with external users, and 3, emails that PDF. That sounds like a pretty slick process.
Yeah, so...
and they do have Enterprise M3, Microsoft 365 suite license. So it would be difficult to use any other software outside of that.
So if we have time, maybe we can go through, maybe we can do an example of this, but basically what I would look into would be a Power Automate merge functionality. So you can use it's a premium connection, so it would require licensing for the person or the account that owns the flow that would be doing this, but you could run a flow that would be able to take and use a Word template and do a merge effectively from the data that you have in the list into the template, and then save that template off as a PDF, and then either attach it to an email or send a link to someone from that email. But that's I think the thing that I would look at in Office 365 for how to do this. It would be looking at that Word. There's a Word connector, and that Word connector has some functionality related to doing the merging of this type or creation of Word documents in this way. So that's what I would probably investigate or spend my time looking at.
Yeah, and a great idea on modernizing that flow. So I'll note that one. If we do have time in the kind of back half of this hour, if we run out of questions, that might be one that we could
show
demo.
a little bit, yeah.
But we do have a lot of other questions to get to, so let's continue there. This one actually came in from LinkedIn. Do we want to go
let's
through
do
this
that one. Yeah.
Okay. This person says, my team uses a shared inbox to manage a high volume of unformatted questions. We're exploring ways to streamline this process, possibly using Microsoft Forms or Power Apps. Can you provide tips on how Microsoft 365 tools can help us organize and manage these inquiries more efficiently?
Yeah, so...
high volume of unformatted questions.
There's, again, much like everything, lots of questions. If you're dealing, I'm going to assume you're dealing only with external or internal users. I would have a completely different answer and response if you're dealing with getting these questions from people outside of your tenant, outside of your organization. But I'm going to assume you're talking about internal to your organization. And I, generally speaking, I would be getting rid of email as quickly as possible. And I would replace it with lists or Dataverse or even if, depending on what these questions are, if these questions are meant to, if they're truly questions, I would also investigate something like Viva Engage, right? Switch this concept to, instead of being what you're currently doing, which sounds a lot like they create a ticket. Like they made the question, so I'm responsible for responding, and it's my team that has to respond to say, no. If you have a question, just post it to the community, post it to Viva Engage, and someone will respond, right? Like we'll get to it, right? Like somebody in that community will get notified and they'll respond to it. In reality, my guess would be you probably have it's varied. Some should be appropriate or would be appropriate going to Viva Engage. Some would not be appropriate, and you want some way to do it.
Because you're kind of making the distinction of if it's internal and there are questions that a lot of people might have, it's better to have it posted in a place that you're not getting the same question multiple times because other people can see it was asked.
And that you're building a knowledge base so that other people can just like go look it up if they need to, right? Yep. So, it's a very common practice for us to be recommending, well, if you're or a group that has a lot of these types of requests and currently gets a lot through email, make a resource some way that is publicly available where people can self-help. That is number one, whether or not that be Viva Engage, whether or not be SharePoint sites, whether or not that be some way of doing it, right? So in some cases it's, in some cases it's all of the above. And then the second, so that's for the like self-help scenario. And then for ones where people are asking you for specific responses and maybe you need to track resolution time and, it's a break fix kind of scenario, a list, some other mechanism to manage that is going to always be good. Email is bad. Yeah. Email is evil.
Let's pretend that we do know that this is an external. So external contacts are sending these questions in. How would you change your response?
So my first question would be
forms, and that can be used with
it
external,
can, but the question becomes how important is this, right? Like if this is a core part of an organization, a core part of a business, I would be looking at a portal of some sort, right? So this would be a dedicated website that has advanced features to create a truly engaging experience for your customers, right? So it would have a login and it would have notifications maybe, and it would and maybe you're tracking this through and they can monitor the process through it, right? That's the solution if you're talking about this is our main customer feedback solution. This is our main customer interaction, of whatever, for whatever reason, right? We have a customer who it's not the end customer, but it's someone else, and they needed a way for them to have visibility into reports, right? So they were sending reports on a monthly basis. This is core to their business. You should let them come and get it anytime they want. You shouldn't just send a thing once a month. They should have live analytics, right?
And that's all the benefits
that's all the benefits by doing that.
Yeah.
But the cost is way high. Yeah. Like the effort and cost is way higher, right?
One of the things we set up with some of our clients is if they have questions or if they need to report a bug, we just have that set up in an MS form that then runs a flow to inform us in a team or a Slack.
That's the other end of it, which would be the lowest end of it, which would be like an MS form or something similar where you can share that with an external party and they can just go fill this stuff out. With an MS form, that is challenging because when you share it, you have less control over who's and what's going on with it.
Right.
You could also do that with a list, right? You can share a list externally, right? But those two things are would be on the lower cost, but also lower value end of it. But those would be and then there's a bunch of stuff in between, right? Yeah. A Canvas app or a custom developed solution is problematic for external. That's the reason why we're not talking about that. That's really the reason we're not talking about Dataverse, because external access to that is expensive or challenging to manage. Yeah. Those would be a couple things.
Whoever asked this question, you were on the right track in thinking that you could definitely use Microsoft Forms and or Power Apps.
You could, 100%.
Instead of email. So we're definitely recommending it.
You definitely should not use email.
So yeah. Make the switch, and even if you start on the lower end, the less control end, like Matt was saying, we would highly recommend starting there. Okay, one other one that came in before we started. I'm going to read this one, and we actually have a response from another team member, Mike. I don't know if we want to read his response before we get into our thoughts. So this person writes, when recording emails in Salesforce, we use the Outlook plugin. This creates an activity record, but the original email does not attach. We are often asked by advisors to resend the email, but the request is received by another team member who can see the email content in Salesforce, but can't forward the original email because that's in the sender's Outlook. Already makes me want to pull my hair out listening to this scenario. Is there a way to create a Power Automate flow that would recognize when the Salesforce plugin is selected to then forward the original email to a group email box? Any other possible solutions this group can think of?
Yeah, I mean, so again, we're not Salesforce experts. However, Salesforce does have integration that allows you to have advanced integration with Outlook, and I think that would be the primary solution. We do something similar with our CRM system, where basically each user sets it up, and then the system, the CRM system, in this case Salesforce, just monitors your email, and when it sees an email that comes in that's related to the people, related to the contact, it just automatically attaches it to the thread, right? It just becomes part of what's going on in this case, Salesforce. That probably is the right solution because it will address everything, right? No matter what's happening in anybody's email anywhere, that email will be representative on that customer's record, if you will, and therefore everyone who has access to that customer record will now have information about it and understand what's going on. So something to that effect is what I think we would recommend. Your specific question about can you create a Power Automate, for sure, I think you can create a Power Automate. I don't exactly know how you would determine that it's coming from the plugin. I'm sure that you probably could. But yes, there's definitely something you can do there. We would always lean into, what's Salesforce way, what's their suggested way of solving this problem? Because we really want to leverage, we either want to leverage what they're doing or we want to be telling them what's not working for you as a customer so that they can start addressing it in a future product release. Mm-hmm. That should always be everyone's go-to, even if it seems like you're screaming into the void, especially if you're responding to somebody saying, hey, we don't like your app the way it works. We want it to work differently. A lot of times it can seem like no one's listening, but just having you put it out there will help. It may take time, but it will help.
Okay. We've got another question that came in early, so we'll go to that one. But before we answer that one, I just want to ask the crowd, one of the topics we've been talking a lot about with a lot of our different clients and just different teams that we work with is project management and task management, and also project management in the non-traditional sense. So if you're just a manager and you're trying to manage a team and manage what they're doing, and are you doing that at your organization? Are you bumping up into not feeling like you know which tool to use in the Microsoft suite? Really, any questions around that or any comments you want to leave? We're curious to kind of hear from people on what they're seeing, or maybe something's working really well at your organization. Feel free to share. We would love to hear about that specifically. So while we answer this next question, be thinking about task management, project management. Is Microsoft 365 working for you, or are you using something else? I know Matt and I are curious to know.
Yep.
So this question is all about managing a SQL database. So the question is, what is the best way to manage a SQL database connection through ALM? We can use data source environment variables for SharePoint lists. How can we do something similar with SQL and blob storage?
Yeah, so I presume they're talking about a Canvas app. Relatively recently, Microsoft has been making some more changes to the way all of that works. In SharePoint, with SharePoint data source, it's just different. It's not the same as other data sources. With a SQL data source, you actually get a separate connection. And I believe what you would be able to do is that connection is going to create a connection reference, if you will, and then that reference will just work with ALM all the way up. Again, we could maybe walk through some of the scenarios, but it should just work for you. If you've not tried it, you should be able to have a Canvas app that's in a solution, make the connection. The connection should create a separate connection that's managed outside of the Canvas app that you should be able to then migrate that connection up to the next, the higher environment, if you will. And when doing so, then you would be able to create a new connection that would have a different connection information and associate with the same connection reference, which is an environment variable. And then that would basically allow you to do what you would want to do.
Okay. That question was from Sean. I'm not sure if they are on the call. But yeah, hope that answer helped. So thank you, Sean. Kathy, we got through your question on the Power Automate with Salesforce and all of that. Let us know, Kathy. I think you are here if you have a follow-up question or any context to add. Let's see. I'm not sure who the LinkedIn question was from. We got through, I think, all the ones from YouTube.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you have another question, post it. I think we're through all of the questions, and we may go and demo creating this PDF template thing.
Yeah, we can do a little bit of that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
if
Let
that's
me
helpful.
see.
Your
Give me
name
just a
on
minute to
YouTube
get
is
ready, I guess.
H4 exclamation point. We're going to demo creating your solution.
We're probably not going to demo the whole thing, but I'll at least point to what we're
point to
talking
how
about.
it would look. Yeah. Okay, here's another question from Teams. Erica writes, do you think workflows should be moved into Power Automate?
So, Erica, what do you mean by workflow?
Oh.
Do you
This is a
mean
different question.
SharePoint 2013 workflow? Do you mean or do you mean like human workflows? Like, what exactly? If you can give me some more detail on that, I think we can answer that.
Okay. Dynamics 365.
Oh, okay. It depends. So I think it depends on what you're really trying to do. A lot of which I think Michaela and Mike would probably be best suited to answer some of these questions, but I think it really depends on what you're trying to do. And I think when you say workflows, I wonder, are you meaning, and the term of it is escaping me, business process flows, or are you thinking something else? So actual workflows. Okay, yeah. I mean, I would leverage Power Automate as much as I could. If you don't need anything that's special to the Dynamics workflows functionality, I would go Power Automate. I think it's got a lot more options. But I would be interested if Mike or Michaela is on. You're asked the question in Teams; they may be on and may be able to provide some further feedback on that. But I think, generally speaking, I would try to be using that.
Okay, so don't get into this quite yet, the demo question,
Okay.
because I think this topic-based communication question is a great one from Brianna, and we're going to have probably a lot to say on it. So I'm going to read it out, and then
It's a big one.
we're going to share our thoughts. We're actually putting together a topic-based communication workshop right now. So she writes, I've introduced the concept of topic-based communication to my director and other leaders. Initially, they created a shared OneNote to facilitate this. However, I expressed my concerns about the dependency on individuals to review and communicate the contents of the OneNote to the team. To address this, I recommend creating a dedicated team on Microsoft Teams. They created the team. Success, right? They literally just uploaded the OneNote within Teams with no channels for communication. Oh no. There seems to be some confusion about how to effectively utilize Teams and the benefits of topic-based communication. I provided numerous resources to assist them, including the ones from your beautiful team. Thanks. How can I best approach this issue to clarify the use of Teams and ensure its potential is fully realized? Woo!
That's
Go
a big
you,
one.
though. I want to give you such kudos for sticking with this, and it's clear you see the value in topic-based communication. We definitely do as well, but you are hitting on it that it does need to be set up right to realize that full value. Okay, I'll let you give your thoughts first.
The words that you put on the page right now don't lead me to believe that they did anything wrong once they did what they did. It's unclear what they're using the OneNote for. If they're using the OneNote as a wiki to store knowledge, what they did is probably right. Like, you don't need channels. You don't need other things. If I read into what you're saying, well, they're using that to communicate a bunch of other stuff that really should either be channel messages or planner boards or other things, right? And so there's two different pieces, and I would encourage you to take the wins where you get them. They're uploading emails to OneNote.
Yeah, that's not
Yeah. Okay. Yes.
like Matt. Let me translate what I'm reading through here. Does using OneNote replace internal email?
No, for sure
if
not.
they're trying to replace internal email, which it sounds like that's kind of what they're doing, what would the advice be?
Yeah. I'm going to try to talk a little bit about the problem that you're having. One of the things we're working on trying to figure out ways to really drive this home to people. and we've came up with a couple, like Mitch has worked on one just recently that's part of our total communication reset. It's a video clip that I think does a pretty good job. Em and I actually just recently were talking about, taking that even further a level. There is a mental shift that you have to facilitate where you're about understanding the core problems with the tools that they're using and understanding what core tools work, how and why they work better. And so we've used, so right now we're using a ball metaphor or ball.
Like if there's a bucket full of balls, each ball represents an email. That's an inbox, right? So you've got this big bucket and you just have a mess of emails that aren't organized, that are all just core to that one individual, that one person. Are you getting us our props?
Yeah.
Awesome. So that's the mindset that you could use. The reason we're trying to give you this is that this could be a metaphor you could use.
You should use it with them. Yes, we think
this helps visually break it down.
If you want some of the stuff we're creating, if you purchased one of that, you would have some of this done for you, like that you could show to them. But if you're doing it yourself, it's literally like, hey, each one of these balls is a topic or a piece of information, and if this is your email, and I'm putting it here, like it's with all of these other balls, and I don't know what to, which to be clear, anybody else who's on this, if you want to give thumbs ups or some that give reaction, we'd love to know what people think about this, because this is a problem. The problem that you're experiencing, Brianna, is a problem we're trying to solve, which is getting people who don't understand. There's two pieces to it, and this is the first piece of it, which is understanding the problem that email provides. And then the second piece we're going to talk about is which one to use. But it's basically like, hey, this is what it is. This is what email turns into, and it's terrible. And what you've just done with the Outlook thing or the OneNote thing that they're doing is they've solved one problem, which is to say, this is my email. This is one person's email box. There's another one here and another one there and another one. They're all different, right? And so then you've got a copy of this in like 5 people's email boxes, right? They solved one problem, which is now there's only one. Change this to OneNote, right? And they've got this OneNote, but it's got all of this stuff in here, and OneNote isn't made for what they're using it for, right?
Another major issue, right, with inboxes are that the priority is the exact same. When emails come in, you just read them from the top to bottom, the date they come in. There's really no sorting happening. Tanya's making a good point. OneNote actually doesn't even provide updates when info is added, and notification-wise, it's kind of a mess. It would be difficult to track what's new.
And the other thing is, it's also what they've really done is they've also created another copy, because this same piece of information is now in OneNote, but it's also in everybody's email, and it just makes a mess. So instead, what we're trying to say, what you want to do is you want to take and create these buckets where you would then take these pieces of information and you would put them in these buckets, and these buckets aren't owned by a person, right? So this isn't Emma's folder in her mailbox labeled this that she dropped the emails into. This is the place where we put things, right?
So that's project 1, that's project 2. Pretend these have dividers.
Yep.
Sorry, this is really on the fly.
Yeah, this is all on the fly. But this is like, this thing is now on, it's shared by everyone. So instead of me having a copy of this in my mailbox, it's all here, and I just go here to look at it.
Right.
Which they're seeing what's going on in OneNote that way, and that's good. The piece they're missing, which is, we've now talked about topics, now we need to talk about tools, right? The challenge is OneNote is not meant for conversations, right? OneNote is meant for documentation, for storage of long-term information, for turning something that's a conversation into something that's permanent, right? Teams, and specifically chats, channels, those, and email even, those are conversation tools, right? And so if they're trying to have a they're saying, oh, we're having a conversation, that's what these emails are. Well, your only tools you can choose from for conversations are chats, channels, or email. Email is a no-go because it's got all these problems we just talked about.
And OneNote can't replace.
Well, OneNote is not a conversation thing.
It's not a conversation tool, right?
Channels, chats is very similar to. So chats, let's talk about that a second. Chats are a little bit better because now in my chat situation, I still got a little bit, like I've got a couple buckets, but it's still owned by me. So I get a copy, and Emma gets a copy, and everybody gets a copy of this message, and I get to choose what I do with that message. Whereas if I put it in a channel, right? This is now not only just a topic or a way to organize it, it's actually a storage, security, management component, right? And so this becomes the channel of the 3 options you could choose. If you're talking about putting it in OneNote, it should go here instead, right? And having that conversation with people, that's the conversation you need to be having, is to make them understand you as a person need to decide not just that you care about the topics, but the tool you choose needs to be appropriate. And in your case, OneNotes that's not a conversation tool.
So let's take her example specifically and really answer this question. So they did create the dedicated team on Microsoft Teams. That is a win. That is a success because now you have the infrastructure there. However, there's no channels for communication. So I think our advice, correct me if I'm wrong, would be you need to set up channels and understand what type of conversation you want, whether it is just one channel for that one team, if they just need the one channel, or whether you need multiple.
I think there's lots of different ways. Like it's
There
unclear whether or not you need to have multiple.
But
I think the most important thing you need to do is have a win. So maybe it's getting on a call with whoever you're talking to and saying, "Hey, we're gonna try this out, and I'm gonna help you choose this. And so I'm gonna take this email you just sent, and we're gonna put it in a team channel message, and
even if it's just in the general channel,
even if it's just don't make it multiple channels, just do one. Let's just do one at a time.
So that channel already exists.
And let's start having that conversation and get that win, right? And when they start to see it and feel it, that's when you may start to see some improvement in their behavior. And that's another thing that we really talk about, and I can't stress it enough. This is what just happened is a win, right? Like what they did, you should see as a win, even though it's very devastating and frustrating to you because you're like,
oh, they were almost there.
They were almost there. They're just not quite doing what we want. It's okay. This is the other way I talk about it is this is a personal skill. So, and the reason it's personal, individual, it's the person has to get better at this, is because I'm in control of that conversation. I get to choose whether I do an email or a text message or a channel message or a personal or individual conversation. I get to choose it. I'm in control, right? But the impact is on the organization. So the organizational impact is so important. That's the reason everybody needs to change. But it is a personal thing, and people will change at different rates. People will have different perspectives. It's going to go slow. I would just encourage you, keep at it. It will get better. Yeah. You know, we've been working, I work with a very, very large organization, and people in that organization are at various levels, and it can be very frustrating when you start working with a new person who all of this stuff is brand new for, whereas your core team that you've been working with, you've kind of trained them and gotten them in the mode of doing it for maybe a couple years now, but you get somebody new that gets involved, and you just got to step back and say, it's okay. They're going to learn too. They're going to see the benefits. It's just going to take time. And one of the beauties of the way that team is set up, and if you have OneNote set up, as a tab on that team, is you are starting to make kind of this single landing page for your different team members. So like Matt is saying, if you start to bring emails into those channel messages, they may already be visiting that team a lot more if they're looking to that OneNote for information. So you're starting to create that ecosystem, and then it will start to catch on of, wow, this is actually a lot easier to have this conversation here because everyone sees it. Everyone can jump over to the OneNote that we're talking about, maybe some content in that. Again, it's hard to know exactly what's in that OneNote, but if you can kind of bring people to a place they already are and then have the conversation there, that'll help you with the momentum. Yeah, and the other thing I would say is that they moving for like the two approaches that I do is I will take, let's say I got an email from someone and it shouldn't have come an email. I'll take that email, copy it into a message in a channel, post that message, tag everyone that was in the email, and then go back into the email and reply and say, hey, I moved this conversation into the channel. Please use that going forward, right? I'm not calling anyone out. I'm not saying anybody did anything wrong. I'm trying to be I'm just saying, hey, this is where we're going. The other thing that I do sometimes is say, maybe this is somebody this has happened a couple times for, and maybe you say, hey, can we move this conversation to this channel and link the channel, right? So there's also a bunch of ways that you can do to like help people know what they're supposed to do, leading by example, if you will, because obviously, like, you tried to have them put it somewhere. They chose OneNote, which is not what you would have chosen. They chose to put it in OneDrive, which is not where you. But if you said, hey, I'm going to move this. I just got looped into this conversation. I'm going to move this here. You're helping them know where that should go, right? Like, you're saying, this is where it really should be.
Okay, so I have to give credit where credit is due. This example was created by Mitch, our coworker, and he actually created it for a course we're launching in 2 weeks. Goes on sale on Monday after the 4th. It's called the Total Communication Reset, and we specifically created it because we realized we talked to a lot of people who are like, my team just needs a reset on how we communicate. We need to just like start from scratch and really get on the right road. But like Matt is saying, it's not always just turn the page and everyone, you know, gets with the program, because it does start at the individual level. So Mitch put together this course with our team, and it's just 5 minutes every day. You watch a video, and then we actually give you little activity and exercise things that you can practice applying to not only what you're doing, but then slowly start to roll out to your team members as well. So these are practical things that like we have found work with clients, or other people have implemented and have had success. So we put it all together in a 20-day course. It's called the Total Communication Reset. I think one of our team members can post a link to that. Oh, Livy, you got it.
She did.
But yeah, we're stealing this from Mitch's video, so I got to give him the credit of it's a fun visual for sure. But there's definitely a lot more where that came from in that course.
And if you guys have something that's worked for you guys, we'd love to hear it, because this is definitely something we're trying to help break down and make easy to communicate with people who are struggling to see the value or struggling to see what they should be doing,
or what that next step is.
So definitely any feedback would be great. You know, the other thing that happens with TCR is you get access to us a little bit. So you get access to a channel in our community where you could ask us questions. So let's say something isn't clicking, you can ask us those things. So it's a couple different things. We're hopeful it really provides value to people.
Yeah. Cool. We're excited about it.
Cool. That was a good
great question. I'm glad we got to play around with working through the props. All right. Any other questions that have come in? I see Craig just kind of having some good feedback there. Yes, everything's a work in progress. It's going to be step by step, and completely agree. Celebrate each milestone as it is achieved. Then let that be the motivation to press forward. Awesome. Looks like already sending that to her leaders. Great. Jenga is another good visual. Love that, Tanya. Okay. I don't think there's any other big questions, but feel free to post them. H4, if you're still on, we may point you in the right direction of creating this PDF template flow situation. Okay. Yeah, they're still there. So in a minute here, we will share Matt's screen. Do you want it shared? No,
Not yet. I need to look. I need to verify I've got something that we can.
Yeah. So while you're doing that, I will speak a little bit more to some of the stuff we're working on here, because I like this audience of where you guys are going with the different topics. We have this Total Communication Reset that we're launching, which is definitely more targeted at an individual, but we also put together workshops where we go in and sit with 10, 15, 20 people within your organization and truly try to do a complete reset with those 20 people, in hopes that champions group will then go out and really make an impact and transform the way you communicate internally. So if that's something you're interested in, definitely reach out. We'd love to partner with you on that. It is really hard to find the balance, right, between changing an individual's mindset and then being able to spark that change to a bunch of people. We talk about the champions model a lot. That's always the way we like to do change management and adoption. And it can truly start with one person, absolutely. But if your organization is able to fund, 10 to 20 people coming in all together, that's even better, because then you're really starting that brainstorming within your own team, and you'll really be able to bring that to fruition without us even, engaged as part of the team anymore in a few months, if not years. So whatever part of the journey you're on, we love to come in and talk to you guys and help. So that's my other 2 cents that I would add there.
And it's going to be a minute for me.
You're good.
So
don't forget question out there. Would love to hear from you guys on project management and task management. Specifically, if you're not a traditional project manager, but you're just sort of having to manage teams and projects. What are you using? What's working well? We've done a lot of videos on Planner. We love to hate it, but we also love to use it. So yeah, I'd be curious, folks on the call, if you're using Planner, if it feels like it's getting the job done, or if you're using like Monday.com or Asana or any of these other project management software options.
Yeah, I gotta create a template. So give me just a minute.
You're good. Also, 4th of July is tomorrow, so happy 4th of July to everyone. We didn't even mention that. All right, we've got, I'm not a PM, but I do PM work for my team. That's pretty common. I feel like we're seeing that more and more these days. We have moved to Loop, awesome, and that's working so far with my team. Yes.
Are you using Loop components or the Loop app?
Oh, that's a good question, yeah.
Or both?
And then Teamwork platform has served in the past. Oh, they're using the Loop app. What
Very
is
good.
Teamwork platform? I don't think I know what that is. Is that, what do they mean by that?
I don't know.
Yeah. Craig, feel free to give us more context on that. Yes, we love the Loop app, Brianna. I'm actually surprised to hear that you guys are using OneNote at all, because we've switched completely from OneNote to Loop. Oh, teamwork.com. Okay. I'm not familiar with that. I'll have to check that out. Nice. Thanks for chiming in. Oh, your department doesn't like Loop, but my individual team loves Loop. Dang. It's complicated.
It's complicated. That
Yeah.
sounds like most places.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
I have a blog that's coming out all about how you can use Loop in OneNote. And
Yeah,
That's
actually,
another
okay,
interesting-
I'll give a preview of Matt's blog because I've read it. It's very good. It is pretty amazing if you think about, okay, team loves OneNote. You know the power of Loop. Start using Loop components within OneNote. Maybe they would still be super against that, but you can really show people the power of Loop still within OneNote. Loop components show up in Teams but don't work because no Loop in GCC. Really wish Microsoft would turn that off. Yeah, that is a bummer for you,
Show up in
Tanya.
Teams, but don't work. It actually just got released in GCC this week. Your tenant could turn it off if they want to stop having it, Tanya. We actually just worked through that with one of our customers. They turned it off, and then I'm in progress of trying to get them to figure out how they want to turn it back on. But just FYI for you, Tanya, Loop components in GCC for Teams is either out now or coming in the next week. Like it's right around the corner.
And then I also hear you, Brianna, on the my organization hasn't improved Loop in OneNote yet. Healthcare is slow. Yeah, and some of the sensitivity labels and things like that are TBD.
Yep.
So they're figuring all of that out. Yeah, one thing that we do within our organization, I wrote a blog on this actually recently too. It's sort of a hidden benefit, but you can kind of trick people into it. Next time you need to present something to your department, use Loop to present. If you just put a bunch of spaces in between different blocks of text, that's one way that we've sort of soft introduced it to different people. And there's always the question of, well, what is this tool? I love that you're able to check things off as we're going, or wow, you just made that table of action items on the fly as we're talking. So using it during presentations is another way. I think some people just get really intimidated if they've never used Notion or something like Loop. It can feel overwhelming, right? Because you're kind of like, how do I navigate around? How do I get that slash menu? It feels so different. But if you just do it on kind of a live demo with a meeting, that can work too. I know it's not super easy, though, to introduce this new stuff, especially if people love OneNote. I do this, and so does my manager. Awesome. We've got some peeps on our side. Yeah, you're growing your team. You're growing your army for Loop. I love it. Okay, Kathy writes, can't wait. Oh, yeah, for the TCR. Awesome. Tanya was saying components are showing up, but clicking on them brings a page that says Loop is not available.
Yep.
Dang.
For the moment, yeah.
Yeah.
Hopefully it comes soon.
Okay, other questions over here from YouTube. can you guys share some best practices or principles for how teams can proactively avoid the workspace sprawl? Ooh, this is a great question. That can easily be created in Loop. I want to help my org adopt it because Loop is great. This is a big question and a really key one.
There's some of it that we can't talk about.
Yeah.
Quite frankly, we're a part of the Loop Tap program from Microsoft, and so there's some stuff we have to be really careful that we can't talk about. However, right now, my biggest suggestion to you would be what we are doing and what we have been doing since we started using Loop, which is to start by thinking about it in the context of a Loop workspace per channel or per team. And so creating a mental relationship between the two.
A Microsoft Teams team or
Microsoft
Teams channel.
Yep, correct. Yeah. And what I mean by that is it's going to set people's mindset in a way that will go, oh, if I have a channel, I should be making something similar to that, right? It's not because there's any limitation that they're between the two. It's just a way for people to think about it, right?
And we often think most organizations have sort of thought through at this point with
how
teams,
they're gonna, yeah.
You know, when is the right time to create a Microsoft team? However, we have come across a lot of clients, one that we're working with right now, who said, we have kind of a mess in our Microsoft teams. We have a team for everything. And that same issue can then happen on the Loop side too.
Correct.
So, but the thing that we have found is most people have gotten past that hump of, okay, we no longer have 300 Microsoft teams. We've figured out a structure that works. So then mirroring your workspaces to that can be kind of a quick like gut check of, should I have a workspace for this? Well, do I have a team for it?
So that's one thing. The other thing it'll help you with is, rather than trying to reimagine how you want to organize your data, you're going to use a model that works for you already. If that model's broken, like you said, I think that's a challenge. But that's where I would start, I think. There's some comments or questions about what's the reasons organizations might not want to enable Loop. There's a lot of them. We love Loop. Loop is a great tool. Microsoft's marketing, rollout, documentation, explanation of what Loop and where it sits in the marketplace and how it works has been not great, quite frankly. It's up to the users to with many things within Microsoft, it's up to the users to figure out where it fits. And because of how it was rolled out, controls, business controls, so conditional access policies, sensitivity labels, record retention, security management, storage management, like all of these things just didn't exist. Microsoft has been doing in the last year a huge amount of work to bring those in. They're not all the way there, right? I don't know when they're going to be already all the way there, but they're not all the way there. And I know that they're moving in that, to do more things. I know of a couple things that are on the roadmap, the public roadmap right now, that are going to help solve some of those problems. But because those things weren't available, Microsoft's this is my personal opinion, Microsoft's in a weird situation where, IT organizations have already kind of said, Microsoft didn't do what they should have been doing, so this is a DOA, I'm not going to do it. And because there's from the IT departments and organizations are starting from that position, it's up to the users to make a justification for why they love it so much, to get them to reassess whether or not the new features they do have are enough. Rather than what I wish they would have done, which is start from a strong position of, this is where it fits, this is what you should be doing, this is where we're going, we're gonna have these things, this is where we're headed, we're gonna make this all good for you, just give us time, make it happen. Where maybe organizations would have let it happen, roll it out, and then let those other things come back afterwards, or at least have it on their agenda to come back and look at it. And I think they've lost a lot of people in because of that transition. Again, that's just my personal opinion. There's no, I don't have any insider knowledge about that. That's just my opinion about what that is from the conversations that I've had with organizations about why they've chosen to disable it. But that's the stuff I've heard.
Yeah. And just there's some follow-ups on just the workspace sprawl question. Writing, I was thinking of explaining workspaces as a permissions container as the easiest way to drive the decision for new workspaces versus a new page or nested pages. And then Danya was also saying, yep, I am nervous about not being able to switch the owner of the Loop workspaces. What if the person who made our team's workspace leaves the org? Type of concern. Maybe it won't be a huge deal Yeah, we've answered this one. I answered this one on one of my YouTube video things. If someone leaves the org, the Loop workspace will not be
away.
They won't go away, but you're right that you can't change the owner currently. And you also can't add like an entire group to a workspace, or you can only add individuals. And so there's definitely things that they do need to work out. But at the same time, I think keeping less workspaces is always going to be our recommendation, like not having. Yeah,
Emma, I just tagged you in a
Oh.
a post from previously that we got on one of the presentations that explains what workspaces are, how to think about them. That might be
Yes.
helpful. If you want to use that as an example.
Two things that I want to comment, Danya. Another way to talk about it is like folders. Workspaces are like folders or drives, if you will, of data. There's a lot of different ways to think about it. The storage of it is a real sticking point for a lot of people because it's hard to understand. At its core, if you didn't know, Loop is built on Microsoft Syntex. It used to be called Microsoft Syntex. It's now called SharePoint Embedded, which is now in the admin center, which is what you were talking about. You now can have visibility into them. There's a bunch of things coming with. Microsoft is investing quite heavily into Microsoft Embedded. When it was Project Syntex, it seemed like they were doing it. They talked about it. They used it in marketing stuff, but it wasn't really, like nobody was really spending any real effort. It didn't seem like people were spending on real effort on that long term. I think at this point, from what I can tell and what I understand, they're set on it. They're creating it. It's the basis for lots of things that Microsoft's doing. Loop is one of the big ones. So I think we're going to see a lot more come from it, which will make it a lot better for organizations and make people more comfortable adding this into their repertoire. And we can't wait for it. We want more people to experience this, the benefits and the abilities for what Loop provides. And we can't be a bigger supporter of it.
Okay, I don't think we'll have time to get through all of the last questions, but there was a follow-up from Michaela on one of our earlier questions about moving workflows into Power Automate. So I wanted to read her answer. She wrote, she's one of our experts here on all things Power Automate. She wrote, "We don't have the option to maintain workflows since Microsoft is getting rid of them, so we need to find an alternative. Power Automate is likely the most suitable solution since it can integrate with SharePoint and other Microsoft 365 tools. It's possible there are other automation programs out there that are fine replacements, but Power Automate is closest to home, if that makes sense." So kind of echoing a lot of what I think you were saying, Matt, earlier. But if that person's still on, there's your answer from Michaela. I don't think we're going to have enough time to get into the signature block question or do that demo, but feel free to come to office hours next month. And we also do have our community, the workplace. It's a digital community where you could ask us questions like this all day long, every day, and we would respond. And it's really just a community of other people trying to solve these problems as well. So we'll post a link to that. But thank you, everyone, so much for joining. Any last thoughts, Matt, before we sign off?
Just if you guys are looking to do any of this kind of work, feel free to reach out. We're a team that's willing to help anybody make these things happen.
H4 exclamation point. The suggestion was join our community, our digital community. We will post that link over in the YouTube chat. Or please do come to office hours again next month. Sorry we didn't get into being able to actually show the demo, but hope we got you started. And yeah, thanks everyone for all your questions and have a great 4th of July.